How good is Miami? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Canes and asking this question because this is a question that's being asked about teams all over the country right now, because the best way to answer this question is to understand how good the opponents are, because if we don't know how good the opponents are, there's no way to evaluate the team. And that's difficult to do because who have the two opponents played? Well, they've played one game against Miami. So we have to make some assumptions here. First of all, Florida came into the season ranked as a top 10 team. They finished 2018 as a top 10 team. Is Florida a top 10 team? Well, if Florida finishes the year in the top 10, if they are currently playing like a top 10 team, in which we can't evaluate them based on their second game because they beat UT Martin 45-0, and just about anyone would. But if Florida is a top 10 team, then Miami took them to the last play of the game. Miami outplayed them for stretches of that game. Miami was just as good as Florida. They didn't win the game. They made a ton of mistakes. They made a ton of mistakes not forced by Florida. They lost the game fair and square, but they could have easily won the game. So if Florida's a top 10 team, then Miami's pretty damn good. Game was at a neutral location as well. And Miami had the disadvantage of having a head coach coaching his first game and having a quarterback starting his first game against a coach who has coached hundreds of games at this level and a quarterback who had close to 2 years of starts. All right, in game 2, North Carolina. Now, this is a game that I didn't see much of because it was on the ACC network. I watched the condensed version. I read a ton of information on the game and reviewed the stats and talked to Jeff Greenberg, our North Carolina guy, on the Tar Heels performance. You can check out that video over at Mark Rogers TV College Football. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's over on my main channel. Really good insight from Jeff Greenberg on North Carolina's performance. And they're another team that we don't know how good they are. I think this is the state of college football, and typically is. We know how good about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams are, and then we've got a glut of teams that we have to sift through week to week to week. Okay. North Carolina has been awful for 2 years, but they showed us in week 1 against South Carolina. Well, you ask, how good South Carolina? We don't know. They just played Coastal Carolina. But South Carolina, we can gauge, will not play to their record as good as they are because the schedule is just too brutal. They have the most difficult schedule in the country. So South Carolina may go 4-8, 5-7, but they're better than that. They are what I would gauge to be the 35th to 40th best team in the country. I would gauge at this point North Carolina, with the advantage of playing at home against Miami, to be about the same. The 35th to 40th best team in the country. In Miami right now, they're probably about the 35th to 40th best team in the country. Those three teams, Miami, North Carolina, South Carolina, if they kept playing each other, who knows what the results would be. South Carolina had a significant advantage down the stretch in the fourth quarter against North Carolina, but Carolina came back on the passing arm of Sam Howell and pulled it out, barely. North Carolina jumped up on Miami 17-3, kind of punched them in the mouth, put them on their heels, wink, wink, pardon the pun, got Miami on its heels, but Miami outplayed North Carolina for the bulk of that game for about 40 to 45 game minutes, and then North Carolina outplayed Miami when it counted on that final drive. So if they played again, who would win the game? Well, who knows? They could play 10 times and Miami could win 8 out of 10, or they could split 5-5. Of course, Miami would have the advantage of playing some of those games at home. Again, Miami has not played a home game yet. Neutral site against Florida, on the road against North Carolina. Not the most difficult place to play in the country, but at night on the road. Disadvantage. Let's look at the Canes. At quarterback, I think they made the right decision in Jaron Williams. You can see the arm talent. He just completed 30 of 39 passes against a defense that's only given up 45 points in 2 games. So Jaron Williams is playing fine. He's only got 2 starts under his belt, and he needed to get rid of the ball much quicker against Florida. I don't know against North Carolina necessarily. It didn't seem to be as much of an issue, but the offensive line. That's the biggest issue with this offense is the offensive line. DJ Dallas might have been the best football player on the field Saturday night. Miami averaged almost 7 yards per carry. They have playmakers on the outside. They have a glut of really good tight ends. So the wide receiver play at Miami, the stable of wide receivers is probably top 10 to 15 in the nation. DJ Dallas is a top flight running back. He gets most of the carries, of course. The offensive line, though, what do they have, a top 75 or 90 line? It's a bad offensive line. It's a quarterback who plays uneven. Defensively, we know that the front seven's really good. We know that the defensive line is good, but it's not nearly as good as it was last year with Willis and Jackson. Those guys were studs who completely disrupted game plans and wreaked havoc in the backfield. They are missing that kind of consistent push and disruption across the line of scrimmage. The linebacking core has been really good, continues to be. It might be a little bit overrated. And the secondary got torched. Okay, they didn't give up consistent plays in the passing game, but I think that had as much to do with North Carolina not necessarily being a refined precision passing offense. Sam Howell hit for big plays, and he threw it accurately downfield going for the jugular. And those guys were wide open. Miami blew coverages, or they just flat out got burned, but the secondary got torched. Again, it only takes a few times. It's not like they consistently gave up big plays in the passing game, but 274 through the air by Sam Howell on 16 completions is a lot of yardage. The place kicker is obviously unreliable. Bubba Baxa misses the 49-yarder that would have sent this game to overtime. And most notably, again, the secondary, 4th and 17. There you go. So how good are the Canes? Well, we're not going to find out. Again, they don't have another true test for another few weeks as they take on Bethune-Cookman coming up. I would love for you guys to weigh in on this. How good is Miami football? They have talent on the roster that is top 15 good. Top 15 to 20 in the recruiting rankings, if you trust the recruiting rankings. But every year, the likes of Wisconsin and Michigan State take top 40 classes and make them top 10 to 15 teams just about every year. So that's not everything. It's about player development. And that guy playing quarterback means a whole lot. And the head coach on the sideline means a ton. Miami football, let's talk it up right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And, of course, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Check that. 8 o'clock Eastern time. If you want to come early, you check out our Florida State Live at 7 o'clock Eastern time at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, on the main channel. But 8 o'clock is your time, 8 o'clock Eastern time, talking Miami Hurricanes live with Cam Underwood from State of the U. All right. Would love to read your comments on Miami football. 0-2 does not look good. I projected Miami and predicted Miami to go 8-4 this season. I caught a lot of flack for that, but it looks like it's headed in that direction if they're able to get to 8 wins. But I'll stay firm with 8-4 right now, and would love to hear from you next here at Mark Rogers TV, Miami.